Chinese authorities have committed many human rights abuses in Hong Kong. However, Hong Kong is not an isolated case, and these human rights violations are situated in the context of some of the worst atrocities of the 21st century, whether it be the forced organ harvesting of practitioners of Falun Gong to the mass incarceration of Uyghur Muslims. The Chinese Communist Party has inflicted untold suffering on its citizens. I believe that these current concerns must be considered together, as how a state treats its minorities is a reflection, I believe, of its attitude towards democracy and human rights in general. Indeed, thinking of Myanmar, where the military's genocidal treatment of Rohingya Muslims, minority communities who have suffered human rights abuses in China. I mean, you see all the things that are happening, and you do despair. At this point, I'd like to register, if I can, an interest as chair of the APPG for International Freedom of Religion and Belief, and quote a couple of other ones, which again Chinese Communist Party has influence. And Tibetan Centre for Human Rights and Democracy have referred to the severely deteriorating human rights situation in Tibet has reached the level of crimes against humanity. This concern is a result of the CCP's force and simulation policies, and there are also concerns up to 500,000 Tibetans are involved in forced labour in China. These reports, deeply distressing though they are, should not be a surprise to anyone who has been following the plight of the Uyghurs, who have been rounded up in the largest arbitrary detention of a religious group since the Holocaust. Nor should it be a surprise to anyone familiar with the China Tribunal's judgment that China's campaign of forced organ harvesting against innocent victims is a crime against humanity. The Falun Gong have been central to that, constituting, I believe, one of the world's worst atrocities committed. Hong Kong authorities have used the same rhetoric, increasingly adopting mainland China's vague definition of national security to restrict the rights to freedom of peaceful assembly, expression and association. So I welcome the government and the minister's commitment to sanctions against a number of human rights violators in China, but note that there are many other key figures such as Carrie Lam in Hong Kong, Chen Quango in Xinjiang province, who have thus far avoided sanction by the UK. So I would ask the Minister to give us some assurance today that those two, I'll use this word retrobate, I think I can use that word because I don't think it's a bad word. I know it tells a story, the word itself tells a story. Those two retrobates should be made accountable for their activities. The Minister, I believe, must take the opportunity presented by the upcoming meeting of the G7 to collaborate with international counterparts to take decisive action. Can I suggest it would be the public call for the 2022 Winter Olympics to be moved from Beijing? I believe it's unthinkable that a state which is actively engaged in crimes against humanity should be allowed to host such a major international event. It would send an extremely powerful message, demand that the Winter Olympics be removed. I would also call on the Minister for the establishment of a commission of inquiry on human rights abuses in China. I welcome the government's call for Beijing to allow the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights full access to Xinjiang, but China has thus far refused this call and it's unlikely to change its position. So I believe then, as stated by Human Rights Watch, UN inquiries into abuses have shown that investigations can be comprehensive and credible, even with the Chinese government's cooperation. Without the China government's cooperation, there is ample evidence of the impact on human rights in Hong Kong and elsewhere due to the Chinese government's policies. A commission of inquiry can be established outside of the UN Security Council and therefore can avoid China's veto. Let's do the things that we can do and bite these people where it hurts. Introduce the sanctions against all violators of human rights in Hong Kong and China. 1. 2. Publicly call for the 2022 Winter Olympics to be moved from Beijing. And 3. Push for a UN Commission of Inquiry into human rights abuses in China. Those 3 things, I believe, are things that this government and my government and my minister can do. I wish them to do those things, because we here have a responsibility to speak for those voiceless people who have nobody to speak for them. And we're all here united. We want action and we want our government to do it.